Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to MLA for the invitation to speak today, and also for funding the work that I'm going to talk about this afternoon. Reza gave a really nice introduction to supplementation and an overview of that. And I just wanted to add a couple of things to his discussion before I get into our research and some of the earlier research on supplementation on rangeland goats. And I think it's important at the outset, and as Reza said, to understand that not everyone needs to supplement their goats all the time. It's all based on energy flow and energy balance, and supplementation is just about making sure that the animals have got the right nutrient intake at the right time to meet their production targets that you've got in place. And sometimes there are other management strategies that are available to producers rather than supplementation. But if we are thinking about supplementation, then the first questions that we need to ask is, are our goats getting enough nutrients to meet their requirements? And if they're not, what is the likely response to supplementation if we provide those supplements to them? And so to get that information about the nutrient requirements, typically we'd go to published feeding standards and these types of things, and that's the Australian standards there. And unfortunately, there's limited goat-specific content in these standards. A lot of the information is based on sheep, and we know a sheep's not a goat. So it makes it difficult to know exactly what the nutrient requirements are for goats. Internationally, there's also goat-specific feeding standards, but the context is different. Sometimes it's based on dairy goats, sometimes based on loosely defined indigenous goats and things like that. So we really do need some good locally relevant derived data for our own conditions. So I think the fact that MLA and GERDAC and industry are investing in good local research is really important at the moment. So how do we know if we're going to get a response to supplementation on our farm at a local level? And I guess the first thing we can do is to look at what we do with our other species. If we supplement and see a response with our cattle and sheep, then potentially we'll see a response with our goats. At least we'll know that there is potentially a nutrient deficiency there. Of course, goats have different grazing behaviour and different nutrient requirements. So we don't know that they will respond to a supplement, and we don't know the extent of that response that we might see. We could look at previous experience in our own observations. So we can look at animal behaviour. Do we see signs of goats chewing bones, eating dirt, stripping bark off tree? These might all be signs of a nutrient deficiency for the goats. We talk to our neighbours and see if they're supplementing and what sort of responses they see when they give a supplement to their goats. And ultimately, as producers, we can set up our own on-farm trials and test these things ourselves. And my experience is that producers are usually the best scientists out there because they just get to the nuts and bolts of it. They develop really practical solutions to setting up a simple trial and get the results that they want to make a decision that they need. So that's the other option. We can look at sample analysis. A soil sample test will tell us if there's a nutrient deficiency in the soil. It won't tell us what sort of response we'll get from a goat if we address that deficiency. We can take samples from the animals. The problem with this is that we may not have goat-specific reference data or calibrations. So all we would know is that what the level of phosphorus in the plasma is, for example, but we don't know what extent response we will get if we provide a supplement. And we could collect samples of the diet and analyse those as well, but it's very difficult to sample a diet that's representative of what a goat is selecting, particularly out in the rangeland environment. So as Reza said, when do we supplement our goats? And he talked about the seasonal feed supply and those things. I was just going to talk about another issue, and that's the one of day length. So for those of you that don't know, goats are photoperiod sensitive. And as we know, day length or hours of sunlight a day decreases as we move from the summer solstice in late December through to winter. And I've just plotted out there a range of day lengths across a range of regions where there's potentially goats at the moment. So going from about 14 hours day length a day in December down to 10 and a half in winter, and then increasing again after that. So it's about a 4-hour change in day length across the year. So why am I talking about day length? Well, typically observations are that we see a reduction in productivity during the cooler months of the year, and this is commonly referred to as winter stasis. And this has previously been related to the availability and quality of pastures, parasites, cold temperatures, and all these factors might be confounding here. But under controlled conditions, we know that photoperiod itself has a direct effect on feed intake and live weight gain. The figure here on the left is with some bucks, and you can see fed 2 different diets, so a medium quality Pangola grass hay and a high quality lucerne hay. And we can see during the late winter, spring period, rapid increase in live weight gain that then plateaus off during December, January, February. And then once we get to the autumn equinox here, we actually see a reduction in live weight before, as day length starts to increase again, live weight gain increases. And this work was done under controlled conditions, so in an animal house, controlled diets, no internal parasites. It was in northeast New South Wales, so it wasn't overly cold, and a similar trend for both diets. So this is an indication that photoperiod itself is driving this, and this response is related to a reduction in intake, which then results in a reduction in weight gain. So the question then is, would you be supplementing during this period where you're getting significant weight loss due to photoperiod? Or is there a management decision here that can be made, which might be actually to sell your goats before that period of time? Can we use supplementation to address this issue? The figure on the right is with weaner goats. The red dotted line there is the autumn equinox, and these goats were either not supplemented, the black line here, or offered a range of other supplements, molasses or protein meals. And you can see the loss of live weight when the goats were unsupplemented or offered a molasses supplement. Whereas if they were offered a protein supplement, the loss of weight was alleviated somewhat, but certainly it wasn't a production response. They didn't gain weight by giving a supplement over that period. So the question there is really, do we invest in supplementation during that period of the year? Do we sell our goats before we get to that period if they're at market weight? Or do we just accept a small weight loss and supplement after that when day length is increasing, and we try and capture the benefits of compensatory gain when we know they're going to be eating more if the pasture's available? So quite an interesting question there. What class of goats should we supplement? Again, drawing on some of the old literature, and there is a lot of really good old literature there from the 70s and 80s that probably should be dusted off and pulled into extension materials if it's not already done so. The figure on the left there shows kid live weight there, and they were kids that were born to does that received different supplementation strategies during pregnancy. So again, the black line, those does received no supplement during pregnancy. The orange line, they received a supplement between day 60 and 90, day 90, 120, 120, and 150, and so on. This is the weight gain of those kids after birth. So they were born, very little difference in birth weights in those kids, but you can see the large difference in weight of those kids at weaning in response to supplementation during pregnancy. And in this case, that response is probably driven by colostrum and milk production early in their after birth. And what's really interesting is that those changes, those differences in weaning weight persist pretty well right through until about 10 months of age in that particular study. The other option, I guess, is looking at supplementation of the kid, and we can look at that before and after weaning. Again, weaning is the red line here. So in this work, the black line again, these kids received no supplement before weaning or after weaning. The blue line, the kids received supplementation for 4 weeks before weaning and 4 weeks after weaning. So you can see a benefit there from the cumulative effects of that total period of supplementation. And then these other two lines received supplements basically after weaning and a little bit before. So again, there is a response to supplementation after weaning, as we would expect, but a bigger response if they receive supplements before and after weaning. So everyone's probably stressing, right? Like I'm saying, you've got to supplement goats all the time. And that's not what I'm saying at all. This is just a range of scenarios where there is some data to suggest what the benefits of supplementation would be. And really it's up to the individual situation and the economics of these things as to when the greatest return on investment might be for a producer